Well, let's get you more on this story. We can cross live to Brussels, where France 24's Dave Keating is standing by for us. Dave, good to have you with us. On a practical level, Dave, if you will, talk us through what this win by Hungary's opposition actually means when it comes to Ukraine, obviously a key talking point in the EU.
Yeah, this is really a seismic event for European politics. Viktor Orbán has been in power for 16 years, and for most of that time he has really been a thorn in the EU side, within the EU, and that's meant he's been able to veto things in the European Council. And since the Russia's invasion of Ukraine, that has meant he's been able to veto action on Ukraine. Now, the most immediate impact of his loss yesterday will be that he is no longer able to veto this 90 billion euro loan that the EU had agreed back in December in order to replace the support that Donald Trump pulled away from Ukraine. Viktor Orbán came out a month ago saying, no, in fact, he is going to veto that. It was thought that was a ploy during the election. So the most immediate move now is that 90 billion euro loan to Ukraine can go ahead. But there's a lot more that can now be unblocked. For instance, Hungary was also vetoing the progression of Ukraine in its accession talks with the European Union. Magyar has said he will end those types of vetoes. Now, Magyar is from Orbán's party. He defected only a couple of years ago, and he is also a conservative. He has nationally voted against some measures for Ukraine. So it's thought that politically this isn't going to be a huge change in the Hungarian position. But in terms of the structures of the EU and the veto, Magyar has pledged that he will no longer be that vetoing threat within the European Union, that he will look to work with the European Union as a traditional center-right cooperative manner, while in the meantime he tries to flush the system in Hungary out of all of the posts that Orban is alleged to have put all of his cronies in across the media and judiciary there in the country. So his efforts will probably be largely focused domestically for the time being, but he has said that he will no longer be vetoing, Hungary will no longer be vetoing that progression for Ukraine.
I mean, Dave, we know that Orban had the support, he had the ear of the Trump administration. J.D. Vance visiting just last week to lend his support. Walk us through, if you will, the stance of European parties currently. Are they running from MAGA?
Yeah, that is the more symbolic outcome that this huge landslide defeat for Orban will have. I mean, we knew that Orban was in trouble with this election, but none of the polls were predicting this scale of a loss. The most I ever saw before the election was 11 points. He actually ended up losing by close to 20 percentage points and losing that supermajority, and Magyar getting that supermajority. And so far-right parties across Europe, which have been close to MAGA, which have taken funding from MAGA, logistical and moral support for MAGA, they're now going to be worried and they're going to be distancing themselves in all likelihood from MAGA. In reality, that had already started since the invasion of Venezuela in early January, and most especially the war with Iran currently raging, because that is causing hardships for Europeans both on the left and the right in terms of rising prices. And Donald Trump is now an enormously unpopular figure in Europe, even more than he was last year. So we've already seen the far-right parties in Germany and France distancing themselves from Trump, criticizing the Venezuela invasion, criticizing the war on Iran. And I expect that to pick up. We will probably see Giorgia Meloni running away from Trump, even though she has embraced him very tightly in the past. And from the White House's perspective, I mean, surely they must understand now that it was a mistake to so conspicuously get behind Orban in these final weeks, especially when it looked pretty sure he was going to lose. Russia was also supporting Orban in this campaign, but it was doing so more behind the scenes. And so now they're not as tied to Orban's defeat as the Trump administration is, because the U.S. vice president, in this unprecedented act, traveled to another country and campaigned for that country's leader for re-election. That is just not something we've seen to that scale ever. And so it was really conspicuous, probably unwise, given the fact that they knew that Orban was likely to lose that election. But they viewed their intervention in the Polish election last year as having successfully gotten the Polish president, Karol Nawrocki, elected, because he won by such a small margin. He had the Homeland Security Secretary, Kristi Noem, fly to Poland and campaign for him in this big campaign speech. Clearly, the White House thought they had succeeded in putting the president of Poland in power, and that they could do the same thing for Orban, even if he was trailing failing in the polls. They clearly thought they were more popular in Europe than they actually are.
All right, Dave, it's clear, far-right European parties then giving Donald Trump administration a wide berth, you might say, off the back of these kind of failures for far-right leaders. If we look further, though, Dave, onto the horizon, what will Europe be hoping for now with, a new sheriff in town, if you will, for Hungary?
Well, the tricky thing, as I mentioned, is going to be walking back all of those changes that Orban has made to the Hungarian system over the years, which the Commission has found to be in violation of the rule of law. We've already seen Donald Tusk, the Prime Minister of Poland, struggle with this ever since the far-right governing party PIS was toppled from power 3 years ago. Donald Tusk has had a really hard time undoing all of the erosions of rule of law in Poland. The advantage that Magyar has is Donald Tusk is in a much more precarious position. He's leading a coalition of parties. He doesn't control the presidency, and the president in Poland, even though a largely symbolic figure, has the power of the veto. In Hungary, that's not the case. So Peter Magyar will have this two-thirds supermajority, which means he can change the Hungarian constitution back to what it was before Orban changed it in this quote-unquote illiberal democracy model back in 2011. And also he won't have a president that's going to oppose him in this in vetoes, because actually the Prime Minister opposes the president. He has already asked for the Orban-appointed president in Poland to resign. So this will be much easier for Magyar, given his strength, his relative political strength in Hungary being much greater than Tusk's, but it's still going to be a challenge because Orban's party still controls, even though it no longer controls the parliament and the government, still controls the media and the judiciary. And that's going to be very hard to walk back, as Donald Tusk has found in Poland.
Absolutely. Well, Dave, listen, keeping us up to date on this change in Hungary that we saw on Sunday. Thanks very much.